welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a collection of fascinating sources. You shared excerpts from dramas, poems, fragments, and notes. These aren't just dusty texts. They offer, well, really powerful glimpses into complex characters, intense emotions, and the whole creative process itself, wrestling big ideas onto the page.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as sort of sifting through scattered pages. We're trying to piece together insights into human nature and those dramatic moments that really define us.
Okay.
Our mission here is to unpack these texts and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and maybe some surprising details that resonate with the questions you're exploring. So let's jump in.
Great. Let's start by setting the stage with drama and human conflict. Because the theatrical pieces in your collection, they immediately throw us into the deep end, don't they?
Yeah.
Human struggle.
Right.
We're looking at excerpts from plays primarily, plus some notes, and they are just packed with compelling characters and, immediate conflict.
Yeah, right away, themes just leap out at you. Political power, betrayal, loyalty, duty, that intense pain of internal struggle, crime, and, the weight of its consequences. It's all there.
Like those sections from that French Revolution era dialogue. Wow, you can just hear the raw tension.
Yeah.
Characters like Tallien, Saint-Just, Couthon, Robespierre Jr., they're grappling with the chaos, the moral ambiguity of it all.
And you see them defining their allies and enemies, right? Barrère, for instance, he's called cunning and dark, a necessary villain.
A necessary villain.
Yeah. While Robespierre Sr. gets this label, this paradoxical label, the tyrant guardian of the country's freedom.
It just captures the absolute frenzy, doesn't it?
It really does.
They're referencing historical figures like Antony and Brutus, classical betrayal, right in the middle of advocating for these terrifying actions.
Yeah.
Like a wholesome massacre.
Yeah, wholesome massacre. It's quite a phrase.
It all builds to that electrifying moment, that cry of down with the tyrants, as figures like the Robespierres are literally being taken away. You just feel the immediate life or death stakes of political conflict.
Absolutely. Then we shift, though, to pieces like The Triumph of Loyalty and Osorio, which apparently was later revised and renamed Remorse.
Right.
And the setting changes quite dramatically. We move into historic dramas, one set in a Saracenic or like a Gothic castle. It's steeped in a different kind of atmosphere, less immediate political chaos maybe, but more Gothic psychological weight.
Yeah. And the characters here face dilemmas that are just as gripping, but maybe more internalized. Osorio is a prime example.
Definitely.
He's in this deeply troubled state, right?
Yeah.
Haunted by some past deed.
Yeah.
And what's striking, I think, is his attempt at self-justification.
Oh, completely. He tries to rationalize his actions by reducing humanity to these base instincts.
Yeah.
He says, what if one reptile sting another reptile? Are we not all predestined rottenness? It's a way to just sort of shrug off guilt.
Yeah. It's chilling, isn't it? To dismiss his own guilt like that, like it's just biological inevitability.
It is, and the sources highlight the reactions to him, too. He confesses it was, quote, unpleasant to kill a man, even in self-defense.
Unpleasant.
Yeah. Which just underscores his warped perspective. And then Ferdinand's commentary just cuts right through it.
Oh, yeah, that's brutal.
Totally strips away Osorio's self-importance, calls him a poor, thick-eyed beetle, and basically says he had not wit enough to be a traitor.
Wow. So it contrasts that internal rationalization with this really harsh external judgment.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the consequences of what Osorio did, they ripple outwards, especially affecting Maria.
Right, she seems consumed by grief, dwelling on past hours and visions. Her connection is to a figure named Albert.
And Albert makes this mysterious return in disguise. And there's this particularly revealing detail in the notes.
Oh, yeah.
About him substituting a picture of an assassination attempt for Maria's portrait.
Whoa. Okay, why? What do you make of that?
Well, it's a really dark psychological move, isn't it? Replacing her image, the symbol of love, maybe innocence, with an image of violence. Perhaps it reflects his own corrupted state, or maybe his desire for, vengeance over reconciliation. It's quite something.
That detail is fascinating. It says so much about his state of mind. The sources also give us these incredibly vivid, almost cinematic details from a dungeon scene, like the jailer's lamp flame sinking low, a sick infant quarreling with hard bread, someone desperately counting clocks in the dark. You can almost feel the oppression.
Yeah, the atmosphere is thick. And Albert surprisingly claims he roused virtues even in the assassins' hearts, apparently redeeming them from murder.
So that introduces this complex idea, like in certain circumstances where people actually compel redemption, even in the worst individuals.
It poses the question, definitely. And then you have Al-Hudra's vision in a pit, another layer of psychological horror. She sees the hanging drops of the wet roof turned into blood.
Ugh, which contrasts so sharply with Maria, who actively defies superstition. She holds on to Alvar's lessons in his Portrait for Strength.
Right. It highlights these different ways characters cope with trauma and fear. One succumbs to terrifying visions, the other draws strength from memory and connection.
So what we're seeing across these different dramatic pieces, from the French Revolution to the Gothic castle, is this recurring theme, right? Treachery and its consequences.
Absolutely, but explored from different angles.
Yeah, the immediate political fallout, the perpetrator trying to justify himself, the psychological trauma on victims, on those seeking revenge.
Exactly. What's truly insightful here, I think, is how these sources show that grappling with the weight of these actions isn't just an external fight. It's a profound internal one, and it manifests differently in each character.
Okay, so moving from that personal and political drama to military life and complex political maneuvering, we turn to excerpts from Schiller's Wallenstein. Now, this is a translation, and it drops us right into a world of military command and really high-stakes political games.
The central figure, Wallenstein, he's a really complex character, and one of his most prominent traits, it seems, is this deep reliance on astrology.
Oh, it's almost obsessive, isn't it? He's constantly referencing the stars, Mars rules the hour, talking about enemies who've shot his red lightnings at my stars.
Yeah, specific astrological placements too, like a corner house that makes each influence of double strength, and noting when sun and moon too in the sextile aspect.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting for you, thinking about these sources. Connecting human decisions and fate to celestial bodies. What does it tell us that a powerful military leader grounds his strategy in the alignment of planets?
That's a crucial question these sources invite us to ask. I mean, is he genuinely guided by fate written in the stars? Or is astrology maybe a way he rationalizes decisions he's already making? Perhaps even avoids responsibility for purely political choices?
That's a good point.
Because alongside all the celestial references, he's facing immense earthly political pressure. It's noted how the Queen of Hungary gives his wife a cool reception.
Yeah.
And we hear there's clear discontent at court. People are not quite so well contented with the Duke. The pressure is real.
And the interactions between the key figures really show the depth of this tension, like Questenberg and Octavio discussing the army's state and their clear suspicion of Wallenstein's loyalists, Illo and Butler.
Right, and in stark contrast to that suspicion, you have Max Piccolomini. His loyalty to Wallenstein is just fierce, absolute.
Totally. He's ready to defy anyone trying to ruin the Duke, declaring, "My blood shall spurt out for this Wallenstein." It's so dramatic.
It really sets up this devastating conflict of loyalties for Max later on. It's quite tragic.
And we get these details of the machinations behind the scenes, like the plan for that general's banquet where Wallenstein needs signatures pledging support.
And Illo is tasked with getting them. Wallenstein's instruction is quite telling. Gain me their signatures. How you come by them, that is your concern.
Oof. The method doesn't matter, just the result. Classic power play.
Exactly. There's also negotiation with Wrangel, the Swede, outlining these huge demands, break with the emperor, seize Prague. But even there's distrust. Rumors of secret negotiations with the Saxons. Everyone's watching their back.
Countess Terzky seems like a real driving force, doesn't she? Pushing Wallenstein towards action, saying, "I take it on me."
Yeah, she seems to embody pure political will. She even dismisses the Duchess's boding fear as just fancies, like no time for intuition, only action.
Right, and a huge turning point captured in the sources is when Wallenstein himself seems to admit his past service to the emperor was actually most high misdemeanors against the empire.
Yes. That admission, combined with his assessment that the conflict is now only of power and opportunity, just strips away any pretense of principle. It reveals the pure ambition driving him.
Which makes the relationship between Max and his father, Octavio, so central and tragic.
It really does. Octavio seems to take this pragmatic, maybe even duplicitous approach towards Wallenstein. He justifies it by saying Wallenstein was no longer worthy of sincerity.
But Max is just shattered by his father's actions. Yet he clings to his faith in Wallenstein. His description of Wallenstein's choices is quite moving, actually.
Yeah, even while acknowledging the potential darkness, he says, "Thy judgment may mistake, my heart cannot, I have faith. For as he knits his fortunes to the stars, even so doth he resemble them in secret, wonderful, still inexplicable courses."
He sees this deeper, almost cosmic pattern, even amidst betrayal. It's fascinating.
It really is. And then there's Butler's shift in loyalty, which is also detailed. He seems willing to act, maybe less out of principle and more out of a soldier's duty, or perhaps ambition. His history is noted climbing up from lowest stable duty.
Right, and he becomes the instrument of Wallenstein's downfall, choosing figures like Devereux and MacDonald, who were initially hesitant about assassination. It shows how people can get drawn into terrible acts.
Yeah, and the sources describe the crisis just rapidly escalating. News arrives, Prague then is lost. Regiments are defecting, formal sentences passed against Wallenstein and his allies. It's all unraveling.
There's that final tense confrontation between Butler and Gordon involving the manifesto against Wallenstein, leading to Gordon's shock, almost disbelieving reaction. Gracious God.
And amid all this huge political and military upheaval, there are these moments of profound personal tragedy, like that poignant scene between Thekla and Max.
Oh, right, where she feels her father's guilt is dragging him down, while Max still considers her head holy to him, even as an enemy.
So painful. And there's even that small, humanizing detail of Wallenstein remembering being pages with Gordon at Burgau, just a flicker of a shared past before everything collapses.
So pulling back from just the plot points, these Wallenstein excerpts, especially when you look at them alongside the other sources, they raise this big question, don't they? How do loyalty, ambition, fate, even something like consulting the stars, how do they all intersect and collide in these high-stakes worlds?
Yeah, and how do characters navigate betrayal, either being betrayed or maybe betraying their own principles?
It offers a different scale of treachery than, say, the personal deceit in Osorio, but the internal and external consequences seem just as devastating.
Right. The difference in scale is key, I think. In the French Revolution dialogue, it's the immediate, visceral political fight. In Osorio, it's the slow burn of personal guilt and revenge. In Wallenstein, it's grand strategy, cosmic ambition, and the systematic dismantling of loyalty, both by and against the central figure. It's fascinating to compare.
Okay, let's shift gears again, because your collection isn't just about intense drama. It also includes these poetic excerpts and fragments, and they offer a very different kind of insight, don't they?
Totally different. Often more emotional, descriptive, sometimes philosophical, or even satirical.
Yeah, they provide a contrasting perspective, maybe quieter, more internal glimpses compared to the grand narratives of the plays.
Exactly. They feel more like direct observations, feelings, or sharp thoughts distilled into shorter forms. Much more intimate, perhaps.
We see longer pieces like Chamani, The Hour Before Sunrise, described as a hymn. It focuses on that spiritual feeling you get gazing at a mountain peak, engaging in prayer.
And then there's Dejection, an ode, which is explicitly about an internal state discussing a heartless mood, the painful loss of joy, that feeling of a strangled light when you're alone.
So it shows that oscillation between like outward awe and inward struggle.
Precisely. We also find purely descriptive fragments, just capturing specific sensory details, broad-breasted rock hanging cliff that glasses, lines about the Cam River, behold yon row of pines, or just the simple, evocative water and windmills, greenness, islets green.
It shows a real keen eye for the natural world.
Definitely. And some fragments become more reflective or philosophical, almost like aphorisms. God no distance knows, for instance. That suggests a theological or spiritual insight.
And the lines defining superstition offer a really interesting psychological observation. It calls it the giant shadow, which the solicitude of weak mortality casts on the thin mist of the uncertain future.
Right. It frames superstition not as some external truth, but as a projection of human fear onto the unknown, which is a fascinating way to think about it.
It really is. And then we get the shorter pieces, often noted as adaptations from German poets like Logau or Wernicke. These often have a totally different tone, witty, sometimes cynical, satirical.
Yeah, like epigrams on slander or on vanity. Didst thou think less of thy dear self, far more what others think of thee? Yeah?
Sharp observations on age and beauty, too. You're the fair by all admired some 20 years ago. Ouch.
Bit harsh, maybe. There are even wry comments on mundane things like housegogs or that classic complaint about wine quality leading to stomach aches.
Oh, yeah, blaming the gripes that doth come from wine.
Yeah.
From the Rhine.
And that timeless jab at the literary world. The public little knows the publisher too much. Something's never changed, huh?
Apparently not. These witty fragments show a mind observing human flaws with a sharp, often humorous eye. It's such a contrast to the heavy drama.
It is. The sources also include snippets related to well-known works, like descriptions from The Ancient Mariner that oppressive stillness of the sea, the dropping breeze.
The dead man's eyes.
Yeah, that haunting detail. These moments, even out of context, convey such a powerful mood of isolation and consequence.
And finally, those editorial notes and prefaces, they provide crucial context, don't they, about the author's process and perspective.
Absolutely. We see self-criticism, acknowledging too ornate and elaborately poetic diction in some earlier work.
Right.
We get insights into his views on different forms like sonnets and even comparisons of Schiller to Shakespeare in the context of historical drama. It shows the author actively engaging with literary tradition and criticism.
So these fragments, poems, and notes are almost like peering into the author's workshop.
Exactly. They reveal a mind grappling with grand themes in dramatic form, yes, but also observing the external world, reflecting on internal states, and finding humor and sharp observation in the everyday or the satirical.
It shows a whole range of engagement with human experience beyond just those major dramatic plots.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's try and connect these threads for you, the listener. We've explored these intense political and personal dramas, a complex military political thriller fueled by ambition and fate, and finally, these fragments of personal feeling, observation, and wit. What does it all mean when we look at these sources together?
Well, that's where the real deep dive happens, right? When you put them side by side, you start seeing how these recurring themes pop up in wildly different contexts and forms.
Yeah, like betrayal. It isn't just a plot device here.
Yeah.
These sources show it as a political tool, a deep psychological wound.
And maybe even something to be satirized in a quick epigram. It appears on all these different levels.
And there's such a strong sense of internal struggle running through everything. Osorio's desperate self-justification, Max Piccolomini agonizing over conflicting loyalties, the speaker in dejection, battling that heartless mood. These sources really show the inner turmoil that goes along with external events or past actions.
Yeah, and the power of perception and imagination is just everywhere. From Maria's grief-fueled visions and Alhadra's terrifying blood drops to that philosophical thought about how human anxiety or solicitude creates the shadow of superstition. Hope, fear, even fate, they can be presented as constructs of the mind just as much as external realities.
And those notes and prefaces add that other layer, helping us understand why these ideas were important to the author, showing the influence of, say, German literature, grounding the plays in history, revealing the author's own critical eye on his work.
Exactly. It adds the dimension of the creator grappling with these themes themselves.
So it emphasizes how digging into these diverse sources, even when they're fragmented, lets us see all these different facets of a creative mind wrestling with enduring questions: human nature, power, emotion, our place in the world.
It's not just about summarizing the plots, it's about seeing the varied ways these fundamental human experiences are expressed and explored.
So we've taken a deep dive into a really varied stack of sources today. We found connections between revolutionary fervor, secrets in castles, military astrology, personal despair, and some pretty sharp wit.
Yeah, from the intensity of political machination and military intrigue to the quiet anguish of a dejected heart and the precise jab of an epigram, these texts offer a rich, layered landscape of human experience.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating, isn't it? How these fundamental human struggles with loyalty, betrayal, ambition, hope, despair, how they just echo through such different settings and get explored through such diverse literary form.
The sources show characters trying to make sense of their world, maybe justify terrible deeds or just survive the consequences of their actions or the actions of others. You shared these sources, and one note within them mentions, knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied. So here's a final thought for you to consider as you reflect on all this. How might understanding these varied perspectives on human behavior pulled from these dramatic, poetic, and reflective sources, how might that be applied to understanding the dynamics of power, conflict, and internal struggle that you observe in the world around you today?